Rain hammered the curb as Emma Carter steadied the grocery bag against her chest. Tires hissed, and a rideshare door swung open across the street. Emma blinked, then froze. Lucas Reed stepped out, laughing with Nora Blake, fingers linked. Emma's breath snagged as streetlight glare painted their smiles gold. Emma whispered, "Lucas, tell me this is a misunderstanding." Lucas said, "You're imagining things." Nora said, "We didn't plan this." The words landed like glass. Emma stared at their joined hands, a small tremor rippling through her arm. Horns wailed as the bag slipped and oranges rolled, bright and useless. Emma said, "How long have you rehearsed that line?" Lucas said, "You're overreacting." Nora glanced down, then away. Emma felt the city tilt, rain stitching cold lines across her cheeks. Somewhere a siren braided with thunder, and the night felt cruelly awake. Emma walked 3 blocks without feeling her feet. Storefront glass threw back a pale ghost with storm hair. Daniel Shaw texted twice, the screen flashing like a pulse. Emma said, "I saw them." Daniel said, "Come inside where it's warm." Emma slowed by a closed cafe where stools sat upside down like accusations. The rain relented to a whisper on awnings. Lucas had said the same line before, and the echo scraped her ribs. Emma said, "I think I knew weeks ago." A delivery truck rumbled, shaking a loose sign. Daniel said, "You don't owe anyone calm tonight." Emma held the bag tighter, as if grip could stitch the hours together. A memory rose of laughter that now felt rented. She turned toward the corner light, choosing brightness over the alley. The apartment lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and old mail. Emma pressed the elevator button and watched the arrow crawl. Nora's laugh replayed with cruel clarity. Emma said, "I deserve the truth." The doors parted with a sigh. A neighbor stepped out and nodded, and the nod felt like a verdict. Emma rode alone, counting her breaths. She remembered Lucas bringing flowers after a late meeting, and silence filling the vase. Emma said, "No more excuses." The elevator chimed, a neat, polite sound in a messy night. The hallway stretched long and beige, as if time had drained its color. She walked toward the door with keys that suddenly felt heavy. Inside, the apartment looked carefully lived in, as if nothing ever broke. A cardigan lay over the couch like a rehearsed alibi. Emma set the bag down and watched an orange wobble to stillness. She opened a drawer and found a receipt from 2 nights ago, a restaurant they never visited. Emma said, "You said you were working late." The clock ticked with officious cheer. She scrolled through messages, and the light carved hollows under her eyes. Lucas said, "Don't wait up." Emma whispered, "I did." She placed the receipt beside a coaster like evidence before a trial. The rain had stopped, but the apartment kept its echo. The door clicked, and Lucas stepped in with wind at his back. Lucas said, "You're up." Emma stood by the table with the receipt and the neat little coaster. Emma said, "Tell me the story you practiced." Lucas set his keys down with a jingle that felt smug. Lucas said, "You're tired. Let's not fight." Emma held his gaze until the room shed its warmth. Emma said, "Nora was with you." Lucas looked at the window instead of her eyes. Lucas said, "It's complicated." Emma said, "It's simple." Silence inflated between them, enormous and alive. The clock kept its tidy tick, and the night finally felt honest. Emma sat at the kitchen table with a chipped mug, and the hum of the fridge filling the silence. She thought of the nights Lucas promised late meetings, and how she had waited, soup growing cold. Emma said, "I gave you every part of me." Her phone buzzed again with Daniel's name lighting the screen. Daniel said, "Let me come over, you don't need to be alone." Emma stared at the table where the receipt lay like a scar. She had sacrificed friendships, skipping birthdays and dinners to support Lucas's ambition. Emma whispered, and he was with her. The night thickened outside the window, shadows pressing against the glass. The quiet carried the weight of a vow broken long ago, one she had clung to blindly. Morning broke pale and thin, the kind that never promised warmth. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, Lucas asleep with careless ease. She studied his face, once a place of comfort, now foreign terrain. Emma said, "How can you sleep through this storm?" The alarm buzzed, and Lucas silenced it without opening his eyes. His breathing steadied, but hers grew uneven. Emma remembered the first years together, laughter filling hallways, plans for children whispered under quilts. Now those memories felt counterfeit, rehearsed lines in a play she no longer believed. She touched the quilt's edge, the fabric rough, her hand shaking as if it knew what her heart refused to admit. Emma walked through the small park on her way to the market, frost still clinging to grass. Children's laughter echoed, sharp against her hollow chest. She thought of the future they once planned, picnics, long weekends, a family untouched by betrayal. She passed a bench where she and Lucas once shared coffee, his hand brushing hers, a simple gesture that felt sacred then. Emma whispered, "It meant everything to me." A jogger passed, nodding briefly, but she felt invisible. Daniel's text appeared again. "You're stronger than you think." Emma slowed, reading it twice, clutching the phone as if words could anchor her. The grocery store aisles gleamed sterile under fluorescent lights. Emma pushed a cart slowly, every shelf a reminder of routines built with Lucas. She picked up his favorite cereal, then set it back with a sharp breath. Emma said, "Why am I still feeding his lies?" A couple laughed near the bread aisle, their hands brushing, and envy stung sharp as glass. She reached for oranges, her fingers pausing as memory stabbed. Last night, fruit spilling on wet pavement. Emma steadied her breath and filled the bag anyway. A cashier smiled warmly, but Emma could not return it. Her smile felt broken, like glass too fractured to reflect. Back home, Emma placed the oranges in a bowl, the fruit glowing with cruel familiarity. She sat at the table, phone in hand, Daniel's message unread this time. Lucas emerged, adjusting his tie, rehearsed ease in his posture. Lucas said, "Don't wait up late meeting again." Emma watched him knot the tie, fingers moving with unshaken rhythm. Emma said, "Do you even see me anymore?" Lucas kissed her cheek lightly, lips brushing air rather than skin. The door shut, and the silence after felt heavier than thunder. Emma's hand trembled as she reached for an orange, its bright skin mocking her despair. Emma unlocked the laptop and watched the cursor blink like a metronome for dread. Backup messages surfaced in a tidy folder that felt anything but tidy. Emma said, "Show me what I refuse to see." Threads opened with Nora's name stitched through them. Lucas said, "Tonight was perfect, same place next week." The sentence scraped like gravel across her ribs. Photos loaded, reflections in a restaurant window, a shoulder she knew too well. Emma whispered, "You rehearsed romance while I reheated dinners." A calendar invite repeated in neat blue squares. Daniel said, "Breathe before you break." She saved everything to a drive, as if truth needed a container. The apartment hummed, and the hum sounded like a lie learning to speak. Emma walked to the corner cafe and chose the back booth where secrets go to echo. She texted Nora, and the dots appeared, jittery and evasive. Nora said, "I can't talk right now." Emma said, "Then listen." She typed the time, the place, the photo, and watched silence grow teeth. A barista set down water, and the glass ring bled into the wood. Emma remembered Nora's birthday toasts, all glitter, no gravity. The cafe clock ticked with the politeness of a lie. Daniel said, "If she won't answer, answer for yourself." Emma stood, spine straightening like a decision. The chair legs scraped, a small thunder she finally owned. At Daniel's office, blinds cast ribbed shadows across framed diplomas and quiet plants. Emma placed the drive on the desk like a live wire. Daniel said, "You brought the truth." She nodded and felt the room tilt back toward level. They scrolled through messages, and the dates matched nights she ate alone. Emma said, "Every promise had a twin in another room." Daniel said, "You can set boundaries now." The words sounded like a bridge, laid plank by plank. Emma breathed in the paper and toner and steadiness. She did not cry, and the absence felt like weather finally clearing. Back home, the closet offered souvenirs from a life that felt staged. Emma checked jacket pockets with a calm that startled her. A keycard slipped out, embossed with a riverfront hotel logo. Emma said, "Of course there's a room." She found a receipt for a necklace never gifted to her. The clock did not flinch. She lined the objects in a row like chess pieces. Daniel said, "Document everything and breathe between steps." Her hands steadied as if purpose were a muscle. She photographed each item and watched the evidence become its own language. When Lucas came home, the hallway felt too narrow for what truth required. Emma stood by the table where the evidence waited under a calm lamp. Lucas said, "Rough day." She heard the practiced ease and felt nothing but clarity. Emma said, "Choose your first honest sentence carefully." He glanced at the keycard, then at the door, gauging exits instead of answers. Lucas said, "You're reading this wrong." Emma said the dates read themselves. Silence spread, not empty, but crowded with consequences. Somewhere outside, an elevator chimed like a gavel. Emma's phone rang just as Lucas slammed the bedroom door. The caller ID froze her breath. It was her mother, distant and heavy, with years of silence. Emma answered, voice small. "Why now?" Her mother said, "I need to tell you something I should have told long ago." The words sank into Emma's chest like stones. Her mother's tone wavered, carrying a tremor Emma had never heard. She said, "The man you call father isn't your blood." Emma gripped the chair until her knuckles ached. Emma said, "What are you talking about?" The clock's second hand marched on, mocking time wasted. Lucas shouted from behind the door, but his voice blurred. The room shrank and expanded, the truth cracking old walls and exposing deeper fractures than betrayal ever had. Emma's mother's voice trembled across the line. She said, "He left before you were born, and I built a lie to protect you." Emma paced, footsteps tracing anxious loops on the carpet. Emma said, "So the life I defended was built on deception from the start." Her mother sobbed, and Emma clenched her jaw, fury mixing with grief. Daniel's words earlier echoed, urging boundaries, but this truth felt boundless. Emma pressed her palm against the window, cold glass against hot skin. Outside, the city lights blurred like a watercolor. Emma whispered, "Everyone I trusted carried secrets." The air inside thickened with betrayal's double edge. Emma ended the call and dropped onto the couch, the cushions swallowing her weight. Lucas stepped out, irritation painted across his face. Lucas said, "Who was that?" Emma said, "Someone telling me truths you never could." He looked confused, then wary, as if the lies in his own life suddenly multiplied. Emma laughed bitterly, the sound jagged and sharp. She said, "Turns out betrayal runs in the blood I never had." Lucas said, "You're unraveling." Emma replied, "No, I'm finally seeing." Her body felt heavy, but her words carved clean. The silence afterward was thick enough to bruise. Daniel arrived when Emma finally sent the message. "Come now." He stepped inside, quiet eyes scanning her face. Daniel said, "You look like you've carried 3 lifetimes tonight." Emma held out the keycard and receipt, then whispered, "And that's only half of it." Daniel said, "What else?" Emma's voice shook. My entire family story was a lie. The weight of words bent the air. Daniel sat beside her, steady presence in her chaos. Emma said, "Do you see why this feels endless?" Daniel replied, "Endless doesn't mean hopeless." She looked at him, and for the first time all night, her chest eased enough to breathe. Emma stood at the table, evidence lined up like relics of trust gone rotten. Lucas lingered by the door, his face shadowed. Emma said, "You and my mother built different lies, but both made me a stranger to myself." Lucas shifted, words stuck behind clenched teeth. Daniel said, "Emma, you don't have to let either story define you." Emma's hands steadied as she touched each item, as if cataloging wounds. Emma said, "The truth may ruin me, but lies already have." Lucas whispered, "I never meant to hurt you." She met his eyes and answered, "Intent doesn't erase damage." The finality in her tone filled the apartment with quiet fire. Emma stood by the apartment table and felt the night gather like a jury. Lucas faced the evidence and measured her silence for weakness. Emma said, "This is your last chance to tell the truth." Lucas said, "You're twisting things to punish me." The words sounded practiced, tin against bone. Emma laid the keycard in the center like a verdict. She remembered dinners reheated and promises repackaged as favors. Emma said, "I won't be used to alibi your lies." Lucas stepped closer and tried on a softer voice. Lucas said, "We can fix this if you calm down." Calm was the leash he had learned to pull. Emma said, "We are past repair, and that is freedom speaking." The room held its breath and waited for the first honest echo. Emma texted Nora one word and an address, and then she waited. The elevator chimed like a challenge at the door. Nora stepped in with rain glittering on a crimson coat. Emma said, "You will look at me while I say this." Nora said, "I didn't mean for it to happen." Intent fluttered like a broken receipt. Emma placed the hotel logo between them, a small storm on cardstock. Emma said, "You took a friend and made her cover story." Nora's throat moved as if swallowing gravel. Lucas said, "Don't do this to her." Emma answered, "She did this to us." The old apartment air thinned and made room for consequence. Daniel's name buzzed on her phone and steadied her spine. The hallway outside felt like a narrow bridge between versions of herself. Emma said, "We are going to the hotel, so the timeline can stop lying." Lucas stalled and watched the elevator numbers descend. Daniel arrived with a quiet nod that felt like scaffolding. Daniel said, "You lead, and we follow." They rode down in a mirrored box where faces looked like evidence. Emma said, "No more scenes made in the dark." The lobby air smelled of rain and lemon polish and new resolve. Outside, a cab lighted to a low purr. Nora said, "This is unnecessary." Emma said, "It is finally necessary." The city opened its mouth and swallowed their hesitation whole. The hotel lobby glowed with soft brass and curated forgiveness. Emma crossed to the desk and asked for a print of charges. The clerk glanced at Lucas and then at Nora and understood silence. Emma said, "Room number, dates and signatures." Paper slid across marble like a blade in velvet. Lucas said, "You're humiliating yourself." Emma said, "I am documenting you." Nora's breath snagged as the necklace receipt surfaced beside the folio. Daniel said, "You can stop talking and start reading." The clerk cleared a throat and stepped back into neutral. Emma signed her name like a door closing gently but with steel. She turned and felt the lobby lights follow her out like witnesses. Outside, beneath the awning, rain stitched the night into clean lines. Emma held the folder against her chest and felt weight transform into shape. Lucas said, "Tell me what you want, and I'll do it." Emma said, "I want myself back and you cannot sign that for me." Nora whispered, "I'm sorry," and the words dissolved fast as steam. Daniel said, "You ended it by choosing you." Emma stepped from the awning and let rain wash the last rehearsal off her skin. She said, "I release you to the story you chose." Lucas reached out, but the gesture met weather, not permission. The cab pulled in, and its light made a small sunrise at her feet. She opened the door and chose the seat that faced forward. Emma sat alone at the dining table, the lamp glowing like a witness rather than comfort. Papers, photos, and receipts were gone, but their ghosts remained etched into the wood. Emma whispered, "The storm has passed, but the wreckage lingers." She thought of Lucas, his hollow apologies still echoing like cheap wallpaper peeling in rain. She thought of Nora, her eyes carrying guilt that begged for sympathy Emma no longer had. Then she thought of her mother, the confession still lodged like a stone under her ribs. Daniel's words circled in her head, urging her to choose herself. She placed her palms flat on the table and breathed until her chest no longer hurt. For the first time in weeks, the silence felt like a beginning rather than a punishment. The next morning, Sunlight slid through blinds and painted the room in stripes of pale gold. Emma wrapped herself in a blanket and sat by the window, tea steaming in her hands. Emma whispered, "It will not break me." The street below bustled with strangers carrying groceries, backpacks, and laughter, each moving forward without her story. She realized healing wasn't grand. It was choosing to keep breathing through ordinary mornings. The tea scalded her tongue but grounded her in the present. Emma's reflection stared back in the glass, tired but undeniably alive. For the first time, she smiled without rehearsing it. Emma visited the park again, where frost still clung to grass and children shouted joy into the air. She sat on a bench and let the sounds wash over her without piercing her heart. She whispered, "I will not shrink in the shadow of betrayal." A jogger passed, nodding, and this time she returned the gesture with the smallest tilt of her lips. Leaves crunched under footsteps, reminding her that broken things still carried rhythm. She realized that loss had not ended her story, only redrawn its chapters. She placed her hand on her lap and breathed, letting stillness feel like strength rather than emptiness. That evening, Daniel visited, carrying nothing but quiet presence. He said, "You're stronger than you think." Emma answered, "Strength feels like standing in ruins without falling." They sat on the couch with no evidence on the table, no lies left to catalog. Daniel said, "What do you want from this point?" Emma said, "To choose myself, even if it means walking alone." He nodded, his silence filled with respect rather than pity. For the first time, Emma didn't feel like a victim in her own home. She felt like a woman reclaiming her story, page by page. Later, Emma stood at the window and let the city hum soak into her chest. Lucas was gone, Nora faded into silence, and her mother's words remained an ache but not a chain. She whispered, "I will not be defined by their choices." Streetlights flickered and cast amber stripes across her skin. For once, she didn't feel abandoned. She felt untethered, free to choose direction even if it meant solitude. Emma turned off the lamp, leaving only city glow to frame her silhouette. Her heart still ached, but her spine stood straighter. The night no longer owned her. It bore witness to her survival. Emma sat in the quiet apartment, surrounded by absence that felt louder than storms. The table was bare now, no evidence left, only silence carrying memory's weight. She whispered, "Even ruins still echo love." Her phone vibrated, but she let it fade unanswered. She thought of Daniel's steady eyes and Lucas's hollow apologies, both fading into corners of her story. Emma pressed her palms together and breathed, her chest aching but steady. The clock ticked, not cruel, just honest, reminding her that time moved even when hearts lagged behind. She stood and faced the window, where dawn began painting faint light across glass. Emma walked the riverside where the water carried city lights like scattered jewels. She leaned on the railing and felt the cool metal against her skin. Emma whispered, "You cannot erase me." Her reflection blurred on the rippling surface, broken but still visible. A jogger passed, offering a smile she could not yet return. She closed her eyes and let the wind whip her hair back, a small rebellion against heaviness. She realized healing wasn't loud. It was the quiet courage to remain standing. Emma breathed deep, filling lungs with air that finally felt her own. At Daniel's door, Emma hesitated, phone in hand, thumb hovering over his name. She whispered, "You've been a light, but I must stand first." She slipped the phone back into her pocket and knocked softly. No one answered. She waited, heartbeats slowing as silence became reply. Emma leaned against the doorframe, realizing strength sometimes meant walking away without leaning on anyone. She said softly, "Thank you, even if you never hear it." Then she turned back toward the stairs, her own footsteps the only sound marking her choice to continue alone. Emma sat in the small park where laughter once felt safe. She rested on a bench, watching children run through crisp autumn leaves. Whine. The sound stung but also softened her edges. She whispered, "Even broken branches can hold light." She closed her eyes, recalling her mother's fractured confession, Lucas' lies, and Nora's hollow apology. Each memory pressed, but none suffocated. She realized her story now belonged to her, not their betrayals. A single leaf landed in her lap, fragile yet unbroken, and she let herself smile for the first time without force. Back in the apartment, Emma lifted the phone and dialed one number, Daniel's. It rang until silence answered. She lowered the phone slowly, chest heavy but firm. Emma whispered, "Then I walk on alone." She sat in stillness, listening to the hum of the city outside her window. The truth was sharp, but it no longer pierced, only outlined scars she now owned. She stood, switched off the lamp, and let the room fall to shadow. The final silence wrapped her like a shroud and a shield, leaving her with herself, unbroken though scarred.